Hello, this is Rosemary Reynolds, and I'm here today to talk about the UDL principles from Chapter 6 that I use in the first lesson that I always teach to my Advanced Placement Computer Science class at the beginning of each year. So the first of the three categories of UDL strategies is representation of the material. And the first lesson, let me just explain real quick what I usually do with my students. Our first lesson is all about innovations, personal innovations. So as my students come into class, they're brand new. I have their assigned seats ready for them in my computer lab with their name tags on them. And when we get started, I have a Post-it note at each of their desks and a pencil for them to write with. And when we get started, I explain what class they're in, of course, and I introduce myself real quickly. And then I ask them to use the Post-it note to write something that they feel they know a lot about. And I told them it could be a sport, it could be an animal, a pet that they take care of. It could be a language, maybe they know a second language, a special talent of theirs, an instrument that they play, a book series that they really love. It could literally be anything that they know a lot about and that they feel they could teach someone else. And so I give them a minute to think about it. I let them write down whatever they think their thing is. And I always use the example of I have 2 horses that I've had for 16 years. And so I feel that I could teach someone else a whole lot about taking care of horses. And so with that example in mind, they think about some things, they write down one thing, and then they go and put it up at the front of the room on the board for everyone to see. And after everyone has put their thing that they know a lot about, I go up to the board, I read some random responses, and I get groups of them, either 3 or 4 students in each group that have a wide array of knowledges. So one might be about taking care of guinea pigs. One might be about construction. One might be taking care of cars, fixing cars. And another could be playing golf. And so I get these wide varieties of skills. I put them together and I say, all right, when I call your name, I also have them write their name on the Post-it note along with their talent. And I say, when I call your name, I want you to raise your hand so you can see who your group members are going to be and then get together somewhere in the classroom. And they move their chairs around. They see when people raise their hands who they're going to be with, and then they go and get in their little groups. And at the end, my class size is usually around 20. So I have usually about like 6 or 7 groups of kids when they're all in their groups together. And then once I put them in groups, they teach the group something that they know about their talent. And I set a timer up on the whiteboard for a minute for each student, and they get 1 minute to teach the group something that they know. For example, I give them the example of taking care of horses. I could say that one example is different types of shows that you encounter when you go to show a horse at a horse show. There's shows that you do on the ground, like walking the horse around on a halter and having them go around obstacles and things. There's also riding competitions. There's very low-key Western pleasure competitions where you're just walking and slowly jogging a horse. And then there's barrel racing competitions where you're galloping on a horse as fast as you can go and then ringing it around 3 barrels and then shooting back to the entrance as fast as you can go. And so it just lasts a minute though. And I have them come up with something they can teach the group. And so this goes around, usually lasts about 5 minutes. And then some of the kids ask follow-up questions. And so I give them a minute after that to ask someone something that they might be curious about. Because sometimes they can bring up really interesting things and they really get into it. So after they've caught each other's interest with this and they've talked about what they're passionate about and they feel like they bring something to the class, they're not starting with a clean slate like, I don't know what to do in this class. They start off feeling knowledgeable. Then I have them as a group pick one knowledge, one skill from one of the 3 or 4 people at their group that they think would be best to answer the prompt. And the prompt is to create a innovation that will solve a problem for humanity in general. And it could be something as simple as with playing baseball. I've had a student who their innovation based on a student's hobby of playing baseball was a special baseball used in training that had a speed tracker embedded within it. And they thought it would be really cool if the speed tracker inside the training baseball could track how hard the ball was hit, at what angle it was hit, how far it went, the amount of time that it took, all these different statistics that they thought would be cool to be inside that baseball. And they're not limited to current technologies. They can use things that they're not really sure how it works. That's okay. The main idea is to be innovative and for them to start thinking like computer scientists and thinking of how they can improve the world using knowledge that they already have. And so overall, it's a really great, this is my 4th year using it, and I've always had a great experience with this lesson in my AP classes especially. And so I'm excited to look at how the UDL strategies align. So the first UDL strategy in representation, they have demonstration. I always demonstrate with an example, and I have them, another very important, most important part of this lesson probably is the output. My students create a poster. I give them a big sheet of butcher paper and markers, pencils, drawing supplies. And with their partners, they all create a poster that informs someone about the innovation that they came up with. So it could be in the form of an advertisement. It could be an informational poster. It could be any way they want to, but it can include pictures, words, graphs. It could look like an ad, however they want to do it. And so for the demonstration, I show them previous students' creations. And I say, here is an example of someone from last year who did this assignment. And then I also give them the demonstration of my examples verbally. Obviously, this is a peer-mediated activity. They teach each other. They have strict turns that they take each minute teaching the group something. So that's 2 out of these strategies for representing the content. There's not a whole lot of content being taught in this lesson. It's more about the next 2 strategies, which I'll go ahead and start at now. Expressing their knowledge. Obviously, they have different options for how they can express their knowledge. One of them could volunteer to write the words. One of them could be the innovator. There's usually one student who is thinking of the most ideas and not necessarily writing them down, but just coming up with a lot of ideas. That's a job. That's a valuable part of this. And then someone could be the artist. There's usually one student that's at least fairly good at art, and they can draw the pictures. So they have options for picking how they want to do this assignment. Of course, it's of high interest because they've it's their passion personally, or one like 33% chance it's their passion. But even if it isn't, they at least know something about it because of what their peer taught them. And they see the other person's passion for it, so usually they feed off that. They can use pictures, they can use illustrations. I've had some students who actually submitted a comic strip for their innovation. And they created like this little cartoon world with these characters, and they talked about how their innovation was going to change the world and what it would look like and everything. And lastly, I do provide them with a rubric for teaching each other. I observe them as they're teaching each other. I walk around the room, I stand by the different groups, and I listen passively. I usually don't ask questions because I want it to be focused on them. But I do want to see how they're talking to each other, how they're teaching, and everyone's understanding. And then the second part of that rubric is the actual poster creation. So was it an innovation that helps humanity? Did they convey what the innovation is in the poster? Did they provide a visual? All those different things is included in the rubric. The last category is engagement. And obviously, of course, again, these are high interest topics for the students. They already have variations of the tasks that they can fulfill. They can choose to either write the words, draw the pictures, be the idea developer. All those different roles that they have are available to them. While they're working on their assignment, I have up on the whiteboard step by step exactly what they're supposed to be doing alongside the timers. So if they forget, they can always look up at the board, and I tell them, if you forget what you're supposed to be doing, directions are right up there. And let's see, assessment options. Yeah, their posters are flexible. They can choose to have them comic strip format, advertisement format, informational format. I've had some that create just a big picture, and then they label the picture with all the different parts of their innovation. If it's a physical thing, then they can do it that way as well. It is cooperative learning. It's always a group activity. I never do it individual because that would be pretty boring. And the purpose of the activity is to really get them talking together, feeling like they know something, and being able to share that, feeling comfortable with their classmates. And the remainder of the entire class is a lot of group work and pair work. So this gets them in the mood for that as well. As far as the timers, I also set a timer, not just for when they're teaching each other for their 1 minute timer. And I remind them after 1 minute, okay, person number 2 in your group needs to go. And after another minute, okay, person number 3. And after the next minute, I say, okay, person number 4. Or if you're a 3-person group, use this time to ask a question to the person who last spoke. Not only for that time, but also when they're developing their posters, I have to set a timer, because this is our first class session. Many of them have never been in the lab before, and some of them have never been at our school before, and they might not be used to the bell schedule. So I have to give them a lot of reminders, give them a visual reminder, and also just call their attention to the timer every now and then, like while they're working on the poster. If they have 2 minutes left, then I call that out. I say, all right, everyone, notice we have 2 minutes left before you need to finish your posters. So I manage their time with timers as well. A lot of these activities are incorporated in what I do throughout most of the class, not just this first lesson, but throughout our entire class. Especially as we get more into programming, a lot of the more technological aspects from the UDL principles come into play. But that is how I use the UDL strategies that were outlined in chapter 6 and also in this pamphlet to teach my students their first lesson on collaborating with each other to create a personal innovation to solve a problem.